recording in progress. Well, that's always a good sign, Sally, isn't it? Hiya, right. Well, do you know what? It's almost like we forgot we were actually doing something here because we were just talking and then we were going, oh, do you know what? Maybe we should just click record and get cracking. So, ladies and gentlemen, the first Be Someone Not Everyone podcast guest of this series. Da da da! And do you know what? It's great to be able to say this. My now very good friend, Sally B. Hiya, Sally.
Hiya, how you doing? You always say hiya when we text each other, and I always say morning. you get the note
out. Some expressions become so part of you that you actually feel like you've left an incomplete message if you don't put it on. It's funny, I was thinking the same, actually. Sally, do you want to tell everybody how we met?
Yes. And like you said at the beginning, we've actually only met physically 2 or 3 times, a couple of times. You're coming to my house for breakfast on Saturday, however, just so you don't forget. But I feel, well, we've clearly met in another life before this, but how we met in this earthly life was at our friend Catherine's house, and she was holding a breakfast, and she said, you've got to come along and meet these brilliant women that I've got there. And I walked in and the room was full of big personalities. I feel I'm quite a big personality, but kind of a bit more quiet and maybe a little bit more reserved. Lots of people probably wouldn't agree. And I walked in and there's all this hubbub going on, and Catherine being hostess with the mostess and her brilliant smile and all this sparkle. And I was a bit overwhelmed. And then all of a sudden there was this door flung open and this amazing redhead woman with her red lipstick and a gorgeous expression just banged in the room and went, am I allowed to swear on this?
Of course I do.
I went, freezing out there. And she walked in and I thought, oh my goodness, who is this woman? And straight away, I don't know, I was just drawn to you. And I can remember we sat and chatted, and I think I poured my heart out to you the first few minutes we sat together, and you also shared some of your story with me. And that was that. And it's just been one of those connections that is very strong. And I do believe that we're going to go off around the world doing shows and tours together. Simple as that, really.
We are, and genuinely. So I was thinking about this morning. So I was aware of you because I knew it was somebody I'd not met. But I had an awareness of you when I walked in the room, and I was like, oh, right, to the right, here we are. And I had a little glance at you. And again, I felt like I'd known you. But the thing is, you said to me, I think I know you. And I said, maybe in a former life. And then and you said, yeah. And we both realised that neither of us were joking. Neither of us were joking. So tell us exactly what you do, because you do something that I could never do. One of the many things you do, you cook.
On TV.
On TV.
Which is hilarious, really. My family think it's hilarious because I never used to be able to cook. I was absolutely rubbish. I didn't grow up with an amazing role model. My mum would cook a dinner party with 12 Marks and Spencer's already made lasagnas. I mean, our back step in the garden was made with her caramel sauce. I swear to you, that's what glued the step together. So I didn't grow up with a role model. I didn't grow up with any talent at all. But early on, so in a million years ago, I was modeling, and I was, in those days, I was what they called an outsize model, because obviously I'm a curvy girl and I was a curvy size 12. How crazy is that? An outsize model. But I absolutely wiped the floor with the whole business. I traveled all over the place doing it because I was curvy. However, I was really healthy and I had to look after my skin and everything. So healthy food, I just love it. I just love healthy food. I've just always loved feeling good. So I had to kind of teach myself how to cook. And that's why I think my recipes are so popular because the saying is, if I can make them, anyone can make them. That you don't have to be a chefy person or know how to pronounce lots of really difficult words. It's all really simple food, but just put together in a healthy way. So yeah, I love my cooking. On TV, it's a doddle, to be honest.
One of the things about you, so I talk about the creation of things, and we all create things from nothing in some way. That's what we're on the earth for. I create things that weren't there before with connection, with words and form. But when you talk, so I've sat there at these breakfasts, folks, and I have got, I'm sat there with me 2 packets of pickled onion Monster Munch and me Diet Coke, wondering why I've got acne. And I sit there listening to everybody talking about, the cooking, the food, and you talk about it as if it is, which it is, a creation. So you talk about food like you are an artist. So the way that you put it over is so compelling because as you're telling the story, we're actually picking up on the emotion and the meaning and what it means to you. And that for me is what is quite different about you. But also, it's almost like when I've sat watching you, you are willing people to eat your food and feel better because you are putting yourself, tell me if I'm wrong, but this is just how I feel in your presence. You are putting the people who need your food in the presence of it, and you are already in your mind and heart, they feel better.
That's exactly right. And you should feel better. So I step it back. Always in my life, I step it back because when I make a decision to cook a particular meal, I've made that decision. I feel better already before I've even made it, before I've even eaten it. And that's the whole point. We've got friends, Chris and Zoe, and we were all meant to be going to Spain and it got cancelled. So we said, right, let's do Spanish night. So I said, oh, can I cook paella? And Chris and Zoe said, well, come round to our house, we'll cook. And I said, yeah, I'll come to your house, but please, can I cook paella? Please. And they're like, no, you cook last time. No, please, let me cook the paella. I want to. So I did it. I got everything prepared and I was so excited and it was delicious. But what that was about was not the paella. I followed a recipe and I made the paella. It wasn't about that. It was about the fact that these are dear friends of ours and we were having a Spanish night. So we kind of wore Spanish dresses, me and Zoe, and I put red lipstick on. You'd have been proud of me, red nails. And it was really about us just celebrating our friendship and the plans that we have together to travel and do stuff together. The food was insignificant. In the moment, it's not. The food's lovely and you eat it, but it's the planning and the thought and the love behind it that matters. And that's where people go wrong. I help people lose weight if they need to. And I don't count a single calorie. There is absolutely nothing off limits. It's all about mindset. It's about treating yourself with enough respect that you make a decision that you're going to give your body what it needs. As simple as that. And when you treat your body with respect and get in tune with yourself to think, well, I am going to love myself as much as I would a newborn baby. You wouldn't feed a newborn baby crappy food. Don't feed yourself it. If you make that decision, and that's when things change. It's not when the numbers on the scales change. That's kind of irrelevant. The change happens here before you get to that stage. And I find it really exciting. I just love it.
But don't you think it's the same with everything? It doesn't matter what you're creating in your life or anybody else's. It all starts here. Your head and your heart are the driver of the whole world, your world and everybody else's.
But people don't get that. People don't get that you are connected. Mind, body, and soul are all connected. When people are upset or going through trauma, they are often surprised that physically they don't feel well. But of course you don't, because everything do you know what? I'm just going to switch something off. Bear with me because I've got emails.
I've a Diet Coke.
You have a swig of Diet Coke. I've switched my emails. I'm having a dodgy hair day. What was I saying?
I don't know, but it were interesting. You were saying our connected mind, body, soul,
When
spirit.
also when you go through something emotional, you feel it physically, and people are surprised by that. But of course you do, because it's not like your emotions sit in a box over there and you just tap in and out. It drives you, and your heart and your head. I obviously I've got a heart condition, and I help heart patients get better. And I'm always saying to them, because it's your heart, it plays with your head. You know, if you had a leg that had suffered a trauma, it wouldn't play with your head. You'd accept it. You'd milk it for all it was worth. You'd put your leg up and go, oh, please bring me a cup of tea. My leg's really hurting. But because it's your heart, you worry and you panic. It plays with your head because you're connected. You're so closely connected, your heart and your head. And that's why we cannot go round half asleep. You've got to wake up. And I think that happens at a certain stage in our lives. We wake up and realize that, oh, there's loads of stuff that we can control that we didn't think we could. And it's all about what's in here.
Well, we're going to talk about your heart next, but I just want to confirm that I absolutely agree with you. So, anybody that knows my story, I lost my son, my mother, my father, my business, my home, me inheritance. I mean, the whole thing in a couple of years. And I was so full of grief and anger and the way that got me, I had a bad back and I couldn't wake up. I just wanted to sleep all the time. It was like my whole body was zoning out. I mean, there was more to it, but I felt ill and I couldn't put my finger on it. And all I wanted to do was just sleep so I didn't have to think about it, which, I think that's when people tell me that they're tired all the time, I often wonder what's going on with them. What is your body trying to zone out of?
And sometimes it needs to. Sometimes sleep is the best thing to do. If you
Yeah.
can't deal with thinking about it right now, sleep. Do sleep. Listen to your body. It's really important.
Yeah. So tell us about what happened, because you had a little bit of a pivotal moment, Sally, didn't you?
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah. I was 36. Okay. I was a busy mum, 3 young kids under 5. The youngest was 9 months old. The oldest was 4. I mean, I was full on. I was a high achiever. Always through my life, I've been a high achiever, not academically at all, and not the way that probably other people would measure. But my high achievements at that time were keeping these 3 kids, going, fed, watered, getting them to bed, getting through each day with them, and me managing to go out with matching socks and no baby sick down my back. If I managed that every day, I was achieving what I was setting out to do at that time in my life. And I was at a child's birthday party, someone else's birthday party, and all of a sudden I felt really poorly. And if you imagine, like, when you get that, you're going to get flu and you have that creepy, crawly feeling all over you, and you just know, I'm coming down with something. It was that magnified by 10 million. I just went, oh, something's happening. And I collapsed on the floor. It turns out I was having the first of 3 heart attacks in that week. I was young. I didn't drink at the time. I didn't drink at the time. I like a drink now. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. I was fit. I was active. No family history. So they sent me home that night with indigestion medicine, saying that I had a hiatus hernia or indigestion or something. Actually, all that night I was up having a heart attack. I now know. Went back into hospital the next day. It went from bad to worse, and they eventually took a blood test. And when you have a heart attack, your heart is starved of blood and oxygen, and it dies. Part of it dies. And as it dies, it releases an enzyme called troponin, and that's how they measure a positive reading for a heart attack. Now, the numbers are all different now. The scales have changed. But at that time, kind of between 6 and 8 was a fair-sized heart attack. My troponin score was 48. So that showed that I had serious heart damage. I then had my 3rd heart attack while I was in hospital, was taken into the operating theatre. They did this thing called an angiogram, where they go in through your groin up into your heart to see what was going on. They expected to find a blockage in an artery. But actually what they found was something they'd never seen before. And the main artery in my heart, the left anterior descending artery, had actually fallen apart. It had come unraveled. Now, at the time, so they called my husband to come in and say goodbye. I can remember him, I was awake throughout all of this. I can remember him coming in sobbing and saying that he loved me. And it was just like the most enlightening moment of my life, really. That night, I died twice and they managed to bring me back, but they didn't expect me to live the night. My husband had to leave me at 1 o'clock in the morning to go and feed the baby because my 9-month-old was waking up for a night feed. So my mum was with him, but he had to go home and feed her. He didn't think he was going to see me again, but he left to go and feed the baby. It's amazing these things that you do when you have to. And I did survive the night and the next day. And then that journey to recovery is a whole other story. And I think that's what I base every single day on now, is the fact that, and I know you talk about this, my vulnerability is actually my strength every day. And it takes a little bit of work. I can't just accept that everything's going to be okay. I do a bit of work on myself every single morning, and then I genuinely have a fantastic day every bloody day. But it takes work. So, I mean, a little take-home message from that is everyone has a story to tell, and you can't ignore it. You have to live with it. It makes you different. It's with you forever. But you have a choice on how you deal with it. I didn't have a choice that it happened to me. And indeed, it happened. And again, 4 years ago, I had 2 more heart attacks from another artery, which they said would never happen. And sure enough, it did. So I was back to square one. And I just had to go back and draw on that old experience and think, right, come on, you can do it. It wasn't easy. It's never easy, but I make it as easy as possible on myself now. And life is amazing and brilliant. And I just don't waste a moment. I literally don't waste a moment.
And we're defined by those pivotal moments. It kind of makes you who you are. So, but before, there's a couple of questions I want to ask you. I want to know what happened to you when you died. I want to know if you were frightened. And in a bit, I'm going to ask you about the difference it made to your relationship with yourself. But first of all, what difference, how did that change the relationship that you had with your husband?
So my husband and I have just celebrated 25 years married.
Oh, God, I can't keep one for 6 weeks, Sally. That's amazing. True story.
25 years married and 31 years together. We are forever intrinsically linked. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say everything in the garden is always rosy. It isn't. It's difficult sometimes. But we have lived through this experience together, and we understand and appreciate that we're 2 different people with different personalities, often with different lives, but we're intrinsically forever linked. And that is the strength, I think, that makes everything always okay. We bicker, we disagree. I get so frustrated. He's glass half empty, I'm glass half full, and we're constantly with each other. But ultimately, and that's the truth, but ultimately, we've lived through this night together. And he is probably the only person that truly gets what I went through that night, because he went through it with me at the same time. And we know what it's like to suffer loss, as you do. We were lucky enough to come through the other side with a happy ending. So my relationship with him, I think, can be much more, what's the word, explosive, but safe. You know, we have safety in our relationship. We can really go at each other if we want to. He can be a miserable git sometimes. He can also be the most amazingly kind, wonderful person sometimes. I can be a miserable git sometimes, and I can be gorgeous at other times. But we can have that freedom within our relationship, I think. just to completely be honest and be who we are.
And I completely understand that. So, I mean, you know, I have no contact at all with my ex husband. You know, devils are angels in disguise. I thank him for everything he did. But I will never forget the man that the nurse was holding as he walked up the hospital hallway. The door was open, and we'd been asked to go and identify our son. And I was sat there. And I often think about it because those pivotal moments, they don't leave you. You know, they are sent for something, and it's such compound energy and grief and feeling and fear and love and all those things. It's so concentrated that that moment is in your soul forever. And I remember watching John come up the hallway with a nurse and me standing up and just wanting to put everything right and saying, I'm so sorry, we'll have another, because I didn't know what I was saying. I was in such shock. But that moment, we had our times, as everybody knows the story, but I don't think I've ever loved anybody more than I did my husband at that time. And I completely understand what you're talking about. And I'm sure that other people listening to this will go, yeah, actually, that's a point. So where did you go? One, were you frightened? And two, where did you go to when you died?
Right, now I'm going to try and explain this the best I can, but it's very difficult to put it into words. You have to understand that this isn't this worldly, and I believe this so strongly. Was I frightened? No, you're not. Now, I try to give comfort to people who are in grief, and what I say to people is the person you've lost, they're okay. So just to jump ahead a moment, I will go back to it. I was with my mum when she died. Mum was only 68 when she died. She was a absolute fighting force in my life. She had bowel cancer. She was in a hospice. I was with her the second she died. My dad had just left the room, and that's why she chose that moment to die, I know. And she was with me, and I knew she was okay. 100%, I knew she was fine. The noise that was coming out was from me, and that's because the minute she'd gone, I'd stopped thinking about her and I started thinking about me and how sad I was. So I then started screaming, crying and wailing, and because I'd lost my mum. But up until that point, I knew she was okay, so that's fine. So when this happened to me, okay, I've never taken drugs in my life. But thank God, because I would have been addicted, because when I was in hospital, they gave me morphine. And when they put morphine in you, it gives you this feeling around your body of just warmth. I can understand now for the first time since living through that, why people take drugs when they're hurting. It's not the answer, but I can understand it. So you have this warm feeling around your body. And when I was dying, it was that, like I said at the beginning of the heart attacks, it was like getting flu times by a million. This was like that warm feeling, the most comfortable you've ever felt in your life, times by 10 million. I didn't think about anyone. I didn't think, I had three young children under 5. I didn't think about them as I was going at all. You don't think about anybody. And what you do is kind of go into yourself, and you're on a journey, and you're aware that you're on a journey, and it is a journey, and you just know it's all going to be okay. We never have that as earthly beings. We never go on a journey and think, oh God, is that, we never, don't worry. We always have a thought process because we're developed to do that. But when you're in that state, you don't think about that. You're just ready to relinquish and go with the flow. It was only at one point, obviously, when they brought me back, that's when I thought about the kids and Doan, Mr. B. That's when the pain returned, because the pain went, and God Almighty, I was in pain. I've had 3 babies, and this was like nothing else. the pain returned, the hurting returned. I thought about the kids, and that's when I had the decision to make to pull myself back. And it was awful. It was easier to go. It was much harder to come back. It was so much harder to come back. But I'd come to enough to realize about the children, and then the battle began. So actually, these are the only kind of earthly words that I can put it in to, is that for the first time ever in my life, everything was all right. And that's the only way I can describe it. There's no other words, really.
And were you aware of spirits or God or energy or entities or the universe or?
Okay, here's the weird thing, and this is the first time I'll have spoken about this publicly. Not at that point, no, but afterwards, yes. So that happened to me twice. I experienced this. And okay, this is all going to sound really weird. The next morning, the doctor came to me and he taught me through the procedures that had happened to me to bring me back. And I said to him, could you please not mention this again? Could you please not mention this to my husband or my mum, because it's too big. I had 3 young kids. I couldn't deal with it. And it was never mentioned again. So my husband and my mum, who were part of my care team, had no idea that this had happened to me at the time. I didn't tell them. And honestly, I put it to the back of my mind. But then when I eventually came out of hospital 2 weeks later, I experienced stuff that I accepted as normal in those days, but never spoke about any of it until I knew my mum was dying. And that's when I told them what had happened to me. And what actually happened to me, when I was lying in bed at night, I was aware that there were people around me in the room every night. I'm not even going to think about what I'm saying, because if I think too much about this, then it'll stop me saying it, because it sounds crazy. But this was what happened to me. I came out of hospital, the night I was in bed, and I was aware that there were little people, kids, all around the room with me. I couldn't see their faces. They were sitting along my bedroom. They were sitting on the fireplace. They were sitting on the windowsill. They weren't speaking, but they were just sort of moving their heads. I couldn't see their faces, and they were just there like this. I would get up to go to the loo, and I'd have to move them aside, step over them to go. Now, this seems like a crazy thing to say, but at the time it was so completely normal to me. I just accepted it. I can't tell you whether that happened for 6 nights or 6 months. I've no clue. I don't know. I think at that time I was still between life and death. I think my fate wasn't decided. And I think that was showing me what my job would be if I did pass over. And my job would be to look after the children, because that was my job here. It was the most real. I could feel their heads, their little heads, as I moved them aside. And it was just like they were waiting for me. And people talk about the Grim Reaper. That to me, I wouldn't even use the word grim or reaper, but that to me was that showed me that it was still undecided where I was going to live. Was I going to live here, or was I going to still go? And that was, I suppose, through a very critical health stage of mine. And then one day it just stopped happening. And I do believe, and I never thought about it during the day. I accepted it. I wasn't afraid. I was like, oh yeah, there they are. But they were so real in my life. I would see them sitting on things. And in the morning, I was always surprised that they'd gone. But then I would just get on with my day and looking after my children. And I suppose when I knew my mum was dying, and we were very close, and we knew she was going to die, and she was scared. She said to me one day in the hospice, I'm scared of the next stage. And all of a sudden, this came flooding back to me, and I'd genuinely not thought about it. And I said to her, you're going to be okay, I can tell you. And that's when I told her what had happened to me. And of course, then I came home and told Doan, and I told my friend Danny as well. Those were the only people I told. Um, and it just seemed completely normal to me. And I kind of said, if that ever happens to me again, I'll know what's coming. But I know that would be my job. And that's all I can tell you.
But that is, I mean, well, anybody that knows me knows that I've not had that experience, but I have had experiences that confirm the soul, and that confirmed the soul to you and all those little people's souls, and that we all have a job in life, a project in life. And some people, we've got this odd thing, haven't we, that we revere multimillionaires and people that have got YSL handbags, and, we revere that. But actually, we all have a job and money and fame and all that. It's got nothing to do with it, because looking after, me and my neighbour saved a little robin a couple of weeks ago, and, anything that is seemingly insignificant has got such a massive effect in the universe. And that's why we are all so important, no matter how that chooses to materialize. And as you were talking, I was thinking, I really believe in soul groups, Sally. There's no two, this is no coincidence. We will have known each other many lifetimes. Before we came here, I'd have said, well, I'll be 63, you'll be considerably younger, Sally, and but this is what's going to happen. We're going to meet at a breakfast. And when it happened, we both knew. And also with Catherine, our friend who organised that, the first time I clapped eyes on her, we were at an event and I thought, I'm going to be your friend. We're going to be mates. And that day evolved that we ended up getting together, and that was it. So, I mean, do you feel strongly about that? I recognise a lot of the people that I work with. I recognise them, and I don't know why. I was talking to this amazing woman, and we did a one-to-one, and she's in New Zealand. And the minute she clicked allow on the Zoom, I said, oh, it's you. And she said, oh, it's you. And we both said, don't know where we recognise each other from. But that feeling went from our head right to our heart and permeated our whole body for the entire 1 hour, 20 minutes we were talking.
I so believe in that, and I feel it every single day. Now, the thing is, I have a little barrier, I suppose, that you can't say this to everybody because
I don't give a fuck. They all have to hear it.
But I wish I could, and maybe that's something I ought to start doing. But it's all on a feeling. I know whether I feel someone is a good person and if I've met them before. There are very few bad people in the world. There are very few. I know we read about bad people, but there are very few bad people in the world. The majority of us are kind souls because that's naturally what we have to be, what we just are. We care. We're nurturing, we're pack animals, we want family, we want all that. Sometimes things go wrong that mess everybody up. So I think the whole sort of soul group thing, absolutely, I believe in that. And I can spot someone a mile away, and know if I'm going to have a connection. And some people, even before I meet them, I went to Dubai to do a job before pandemic, to do a coaching, positivity talks and things. And there was this baker going to be there called Melissa Forter. I'd never met, but I just read her biography and I just looked at her face and I thought, oh God, you're going to be my friend. I just know you are before I've even met you. I mean, I do think everyone's going to be my friend, but I knew she was. And we met in the hotel, the lift opened and I went, Melissa. And she went, Sally. And we're great friends. We've only spent 4 days together in Dubai. She's in Italy, I'm here. But still, I call her my little Italian friend. I know I could say, I'm coming to your house tomorrow. And she'd say, all right, then you're sleeping on the sofa, no problem. It's like this connection. There's been a connection. And there has to have been a connection in the past, because otherwise, how do you explain that?
Yeah.
Why? How else do you explain it?
And I think people are so much more open to it, and particularly post-pandemic, because people have stopped and asked themselves, who am I? What am I doing here? and who are me pack? Who am I
Yes.
with? Who makes me feel good? Why? And all the things that we're talking about, and I mean, there's loads of like earth energy stuff that I don't really understand, but my friends do, that are taking us into different dimensions now. But you can see we're talking about this. You know, we're not talking about 2 ounces of flour, 4 ounces of currants. We're talking about what created that. What
Mm.
is it? Who is the person behind that? You know, who are you that manifested this amazing
You
life?
know what? That's right, because we all need a vehicle for our spirit, don't we? We all need something that everyone understands. Yours is helping people sort their sort of organize their words and their thoughts and how they project. That's your vehicle for what you are all about. My vehicle is food. And that's, I use food to get my message across, but actually the message is the same thing and the vehicle doesn't matter. So I think what that means is that we all have little talents that we can tap into, but ultimately the soul of ourselves, the essence of ourselves is as it is, and we just have to find an output for it.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And everybody's got a piece of genius. And what is the big surprise for people when we talk about the pivotal moments and how that becomes, as we've just heard from you, very much part of the story, which makes us understand where that genius came from. You know, that's the thing. But also we're talking about identity. So when all this happened to you, how did that change your identity? Because it must have done. And how did you deal with it? Did you consciously deal with it? Or was it just something that you morphed into another, not another person, but another experience?
I think that was a journey. I don't think that happened overnight at all, because there's two aspects. There was the physical aspect. I was in heart failure for about 5 years. Heart failure means that your heart isn't efficient enough. Therefore, I was exhausted the whole time. Plus, I had these 3 kids that they threatened to take away from me. I said I need help. I wasn't allowed to be alone with the baby because I couldn't pick her up if she fell. And I didn't have anyone. I only had my mum who was visiting. I said, I need help. And they said, oh, well, we'll take them into care for a bit. You know, that was one of the options. And I said, well, you may as well rip the rest of my heart out with a blunt, rusty spoon then, and just finish me off. Of course I need them. We worked around it. So there was the physical side, which was really hard. But I knew I could get through that. I knew I could do that. The emotional side, however, was difficult. I believed on a good few occasions that I was a ghost. And after you've been through something like that, I think insanity definitely sets in. And I can remember lying on the sofa, the kids were on the floor playing with my husband. And I can remember thinking, I'm dead. And I'm actually just watching them. I'm not really here. I wasn't making a sound. They were taking no notice of me at all. I was just lying there, not able to join in. And I thought, I'm dead. And this is what it's like, I'm a ghost. And I thought that regularly. So to start with, I think it's a scramble of things. You've got all these mixed messages coming. I'd experienced what I'd experienced, but didn't want to even think about it or talk about it. My future was really uncertain. I was told I was probably going to die anyway. So I was thinking, well, when? Where, am I going to die now? Well, actually, am I already dead? I was able to be at home and see the children, but it just didn't feel like my home. And I was trapped. I was just trapped in fear at that time. So it definitely changed me, but it was a process to get to that point. And I think anyone who's been through something sort of physically like that, that's frightening, you know, that it could kill you, that's it. It's just baby steps, building up confidence, realizing that, oh, I am still here. So let me just repeat what I just did. And I'll be here for another minute. Well, let me just repeat what I did an hour ago, because I survived that. And it was a long, long slog of a journey. So I think I then reached a tipping point where I had to make the decision to be strong. That tipping point came about a year after my first heart attacks. And I was with my cardiologist, and he said, right, you have to have a special scan, MRI scan. We think you might have an aneurysm in your aorta. And I knew what that meant. That meant curtains. Because this dissection where your artery's fallen apart has to have started somewhere. And he said, we're going to get the team together to do it, and in 3 weeks' time. So I came home and thought, and then he said, if you have got it, we might be able to operate. We might not, because you're really not strong enough, and in which case it might just kill you. So I had these 3 weeks where I was just like, I've been given another date where I might die. I've been given another date. So during those 3 weeks, I sorted out the house, sorted out the kids' clothes, got everyone on standby, wrote all my letters, taught Doan how to give Calpol to the baby, taught him how to sign up for parents' evening at school, because that was bloody complicated. Everything. I set all his friends, because if I die on that day, this is what I needed to happen. That day then dawned, and I've never felt as calm in my life. And it was because I realized I've had enough. I was more afraid of living the rest of my life in fear than I was of dying. If today was the day I was going to die, it's like, right, okay, I'm ready, because I can't live like this anymore. I cannot do it. I was so afraid of just life. And I thought, whatever, bring it on. I didn't even say goodbye to the kids. This sounds so harsh, but this is the fact that happened. Darren drove me to Birmingham to the hospital, went into the scan machine. I didn't say goodbye to him. They said, you'll be in there for about 20 minutes. I knew I was in there for over an hour because I was counting. So in my head, then I started getting angry. And I started getting feisty, and I thought, right, they found that I have got an aneurysm. They're working out how to stop me escaping when I get out of here, and they're going to take me straight to the ward and then into surgery. Right, you better do your bit, because I am not dying. I'm not done. And I got really angry in that machine. I got so cross. I was like, this is not my end. For the first time, and I'd relinquished control to it. And then I thought, no, sod that. I'm taking it back. I'm not dying today. I'm not. I came out and everything was okay. I didn't have the aneurysm in my aorta. That was my tipping point. That was the first day of the rest of my life. And that's when I made the conscious decision, I'm not living in fear anymore. And if anyone says to me, oh, you could get run over by a bus tomorrow, I thought, I'm just punching you on the nose. How dare you say that? Because anyone that says that, don't think that's going to happen to them. I kind of knew or know what will come and get me, but it's not my time yet. So that it took a year of recovery, of thinking that I was a ghost, of insanity, of living I was afraid of laughing, crying, loving. I was afraid of everything. And that is a half life lived is no life at all. And I reached the point where no more. I was then given this second, third or fourth chance, and I thought, right, that's it. So from that moment on, I've never looked back. I know what happened to me. I'll talk about it. I'll get tearful about it, but I am a different person now. So what it's done is fortified me. I've got a better strength and understanding, because I very nearly gave up. And that's what you can't do, but you have to reach that rock bottom to be able to see and get angry that you're going to come out of it.
And that is why you're so brilliant at helping all the women that you help, because you got to that point and you lived it. And the way that you spoke then, we lived it with you. And we all saw ourselves in your story there, so we could never deny you. And because it's not sympathy when you work with people, it's empathy, because you bloody well know what it is. And you know how to get people to that point and get them out the other side. So, yeah, tell us about your TV stuff, and then tell us, I know you've written 6 books and you're just writing your 7th, But I want you to tell, because listen, I know you. I've heard you talking about your app and all the people, and I'm on it, so I get all the alerts. And you speak to us every single day. But I know what those people mean to you and what those people's stories mean to you. And as an aside, you might not agree, but possibly if you hadn't have had the life that you had, and if you hadn't had those experiences, you would never have had the spirit or the soul to go on and do what you're doing now. So actually, it was a pivotal moment, a turning point that put you into the world in such a way that you are now the turning point for so many people.
I wish that my heart attacks hadn't happened to me because I wish I hadn't put everyone else through it. But I don't wish it hadn't, if I had to say I was glad it happened, that would probably be going a bit too far because I've, got the health problems that I've got. But I cannot say life is worse because it happened. I would have to say life is better because it happened. And that's my choice. You've always got two choices, and that's what I try to teach my ladies. And you're right. This morning I did a live on Facebook with them, and at the end I said, "I love you," and I said, and I mean that. I really do, because each and every one of you is sharing, and you're trusting me with your stories, and I'm getting them all to write in this next book with me, and they're sharing their stories and their vulnerabilities, and it's scary for them. They've never done that before, but they're doing it and they're trusting me enough. So why wouldn't I love them for that? So you're right, my whole journey, my whole life has been built around what's happened to me. But isn't that the same with everyone? That's the same with you. You've been through trauma, terrible, terrible loss, grief and trauma, and you have now turned it round into making sure that you do something with it. And doesn't that make Jackson's lost life totally worthwhile? Because it's not a lost life.
Absolutely. He came here to put me where I am. And I always said, neither of us are 23. I don't want to be 23 again. I'm just happy as I am. And I always knew that I'd got a lot of learning to do and that it wouldn't be till I'm older. So, yeah, there were Jackson, there was the loss of all the money, we've had complete destitution. But it is, yeah, I've said it, devils are often angels in disguise, and I wouldn't change a thing. And people say, what, you wouldn't have your son back? Well, do you think I don't miss him every single day, the man that he would have become, particularly now my second son, he's got a gorgeous girlfriend, he's got his life, he's got an amazing career. Of course I do. But what that young man gave me by leaving me has made me go on to do amazing, incredible things and help a lot of people. And both me and you, it comes from the soul. It's not about money. It comes from the soul. And we were both directed to that point. So I just thank everybody that hurt me, that left me, that stole from me, because I look at me and I look at them and I think, well, I learned from it. And maybe you did that to yourself, because when you do something to somebody else, you do it to yourself as well. But actually, nothing good ever came from it. And that's a very different thing.
Apart from something good came from it for you, because
Me, yeah.
for you, definitely.
Absolutely. I would not, and the best is yet to come.
Yeah.
There's just, for both of us, the
You know
best is
what?
yet to come.
I was talking to my ladies this morning because I'm writing this next book, and they're all invited to be part of it. I want to hear their stories. So I'm going to help them with the technical stuff, with the editing and writing their stories. But I said, some of the women have said, well, I haven't got a really exciting story to tell, and other people have. Absolute nonsense. Your life. So if you look at the storyboard, the plan of a James Bond movie or any movie, it's like this. It's like, okay, everything's happy. Oh, then I fall in love. Oh, then I fall out of love. Oh, then she gets kidnapped. Or then he gets murdered. Then they meet someone else. Oh, and then it turns out to be her brother. Da, 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 da. And this is how the story goes. And when you read a book, when you want to read about someone's life or story, it doesn't start with the happy ending. You've got to go on the journey before you get to that point. there's not always even a happy ending, but there's definitely learning at the end of it. And our life is like that. So anybody that is sitting back on their laurels going, well, no, my life's great, my life's, fab. You're not awake, and you're not listening, and you're not living through it, because it's only those dips that make you really appreciate the highs. And definitely before this happened to me, I was a bit, my friend, and my friend Chris, he says I used to be sort of apple pie Sally, he called me. I was apple pie Sally, roses round the front door, everything super, super fine. This thing then came and happened to me, and it blew my world apart, but it made me real. Before, I wasn't awake. I was asleep, thinking everything was fine. But because I hadn't really experienced the dips, I wasn't really appreciating the lifts either. And so it was very one-dimensional. And then something comes along to rock your world, and it changes you. It blows you apart. It blows you to pieces, and you gradually put it back together again. So you're not perfect anymore, but you're still whole, and you're more whole than you were before because you've got added bits in. And that's how it changes you. And then it's really important that you then tell your story. I actually used one of your anecdotes to my ladies and told them that I'm encouraging people to write about their stories. And one lady was saying, I don't like to look back. It takes me back to a bad place. And I said, I understand that. But as Nikki said, you're not going back to it. You're not putting yourself back there. You're in a different position. You are thinking about it. And why don't you write it all down on a piece of paper, take it out in the garden, rip it up and burn it. And instead of you revisiting and going back to that place, what you're actually doing is releasing yourself from it. And surely that's a good thing. So I've got everyone going out into their gardens, saying, write a piece of paper, because that's what you told us to do.
Check in post. You know what? It's interesting what you're saying, because so anybody listening to this, they know you now. They know what makes you tick. They've been on that pivotal moments, those trips with you. And so you've revealed yourself to us. And I spend all day sitting with people going, oh, I've got no, what's really happened to me? Nothing's happened to me. Well, really? Well, let's go back to the beginning, because I don't know a soul on earth that hasn't had a pivotal moment. And pivotal moments come from very strange places and may seem insignificant, but they change your life. So we're in a position now where we need to know how to tell people what, I call it positioning statements. But so we need to know how to tell people who we are, because we've gone from, when there were only 300 people living in a village and everybody knew every cell in your body and your whole genealogy, like generations back. We knew who we are, so we didn't have to get to know each other. So, the whole thing was get people to talk about themselves and they'll like you. Now, unless we know who you are, unless you find a way of revealing who you are to us, so we've actually got something to anchor to, we're just going to delete you because we haven't got time.
Yeah.
And that's why even on all the shows on TV, all the talent shows, on, the business shows, they tell the story of the person. And the story is always bigger than the product. And makes sense of the genius, whether they're a singer or whatever. So, yeah, what you've just done, we can all learn from that. And the vulnerability, I'll be honest, you know me, I will tell anybody anything about the stuff that I've done in life, good and bad. When I've fallen over at me, I'll always say it. Well, it isn't a vulnerability. It's a strength, really, because you actually don't care what anybody makes of what you've just said, because that's true to you. And that's if people choose to kick us in the tits for it, well, that's their problem, not ours. We're just telling the truth.
That's exactly right. And that's what I said to my ladies this morning when I was trying to tell them to tell their story. You're afraid of judgment, but just empathize. Put yourself in someone else's shoes now. If someone sits in front of you or someone on TV saying, my life's amazing, my life's wonderful, I've got loads of money, I've got the perfect husband, perfect family, you're like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
You're not being honest. If someone says, well, I hit rock bottom, this is how I felt, this is how I struggled, and I've managed to come out of it. You're like, come on, you can do it. You can do it immediately. And as you say, it's because you recognize part of your journey in them, because life is not easy. That's the number one rule. Life is not easy. So expect it not to be easy. And then it's like that saying, no flowers without rain, no stars without darkness. You need the opposite side all the time to polarize. Yeah. If it was all just super hunky-dory, la 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 la, that's not real.
No Sally and Nikki without a few kicks in the tits along the way.
Yes, right, exactly. Boy, have we had kicks in the tits.
So tell us about you. Tell us about your app. Tell us, tell us what you're doing, because you speak to your people every single day. I've never known anybody more productive than you. Tell us about your app. How can people get in touch with you? What's coming next?
Oh, well, this is really simple, okay? I want people to join my app who really want to join my app. I want to spend my time supporting other women, particularly. I train companies and CEOs and shop workers and students and all sorts of people, and that's kind of what pays the bills. But I love to spend my time at the age I'm 53, menopausal, heart attacks, grown-up kids, empty nest syndrome, whatever it's called, all this stuff going on. It's just called life. And I know that you can get in a rut. And because I've had my kick up the bum, I knew to be out of that rut, and I know never to get back in that rut again, because life is short. And I just want to empower other women to do the same thing. And I've only kept it to women because that is the person, that's who I can talk to, who it's safe. It's a good, it's a good atmosphere, a good community. So it's an app called the Sally B Method. I charge for it £10 a month, which I think is great value for money.
2 coffees.
Exactly. And that's because I have to run it, and it costs money to run it. I don't ever want huge, enormous numbers on there. I want it to be a community. On there, it's an app, it's on your phone, it's really easy. I come up every day with a video. Every day, Monday to Friday, we've got a secret pop-up Facebook page called the 8 a.m. Club. I really shot myself in the foot doing it at 8 o'clock. I wish I'd done it at 9 o'clock, but anyway, 8 a.m. Club. So every morning I just pop up, usually from my bed, with my phone on a selfie stick going, morning, right, this is what I want to tell you for today. But it's real, no makeup, hair not done, blah, blah, blah. And then we have a Zoom session once a week. So what I'm investing is my time and my experience and my support. What I'm wanting from the app is to build this community that will then go on to empower other women. So it won't just stop here. But when I've had enough and I say, right, I'm closing down, I'll say, we'll keep it going. It's over to you. I want these women to understand their value and their worth. We do things like, there's recipes on there. I help people lose weight. That's easy. Depression and anxiety courses, all that stuff is part of it. But the main thing is it's a community where if you're just feeling a little bit low and a little bit down and questioning yourself, you hop on the app and there is always somebody there to lift you up. And it's amazing. I love it. So the Sally B Method.
Well, everybody else loves it. So, Sally, I can't believe we've been talking for an hour.
Wow.
That's just mental. And, well, just massive thank you. I'd really, I'm going to put this up. I'll put a lot more information in the show notes. But I'd really I'm about to start another Be Someone, Not Everyone Over 50 and Beyond, and I'd really like to put this out with all the material that everybody gets, because you are freaking priceless, and that has been priceless, and it's a privilege to be your mate. And I know that sounds a little bit like, oh, what shit, but actually it genuinely is, because me and you are going to do so much together and have so much chuffing fun. It was all made up there before we came here, and honest to God, it's just amazing to sit in your presence. Thank you so much.
And can I just reciprocate by saying that I feel exactly the same. You've given me an added new excitement about life. And the reason is I have my hopes and dreams and wishes, but they constantly need feeding. And I need to be around other people that feed those. And you are my number one feeder right now.
And
You
on
are,
Saturday morning, you're going to be my feeder in
I
real
am.
life.
I've got your pickled onion monster munch, and you like go at the ready.
I live on them. Oh, thank you so much, Sally. See you later. Take care.
Bye.